All right, here we are back where we left off from the last video. We're going to simply close out of this file. We no longer need to be in the demonstration file. So in order to do that, you can come up to the File tab and click on it, and it will open up some commands here. All we're going to do is hit the close button. I'm not going to make any saves. I don't want to save any of the changes we've been making to the model. Just click no, and that'll bring us back to the home page. So this is where we're going to begin. We're going to start our own new file. So we've talked about previously the Revit file types, or we should have, but just as a reminder, there are three Revit file types. There's a template file, a project file, and a Revit family file. So in order to start a new project, we're going to start with a template file. So Revit, when you installed it, it came with a template file already. So we're going to use their Revit, the default template file, to do all of our projects. If you have your own firm or you do your own work professionally, you're definitely going to want to take time to create your own template. But that's far beyond the scope of this course. So we're just going to go over to where it says models, because we're going to create a new model or a project. We're going to click the open command. We're going to hit the new command because we want a new project. And it's going to bring up this little dialog box, and it says, what template file would you like to use? Now, if you had your own, you could click the browse button and you could go find your own. But in this case, we're just going to use a default. So if you do the drop down, it'll tell you what the two defaults are. There's Imperial Multidiscipline and Metric Multidiscipline. We're not on the metric system, so we don't want that one. Feet and inches, those are imperial units. So we're going to click the Imperial Multidiscipline file. And then we're trying to create a new project. We are not trying to create a new project template. So this is pretty crucial. A lot of students get this wrong and they click project template, and then when they save their project, it's the wrong file type. And then they send it to me to grade, and I take points off. So you need to get this right. So we're using a template file, but we're using it to create a project. If you wanted to make your own in the future and you wanted to edit this template and modify it to make it your own, then you would click project template. And when you saved it, you would be saving your own template. But we're not trying to make a template, we're trying to make a project. So make sure that's selected, and we're going to click OK. It'll open up the template and convert it to a project for us. So right out of the gate, before we do anything, let's just save it now. We're going to hit Save As, and we're going to come over here. There's a couple options. Like I said, we're not saving a template, and we don't want to save a cloud model. We want to create a project. So we're saving it as project. And now you can browse anywhere on your computer and save it. So I'm just going to go to my desktop, and we're going to call this exercise 1. And I'll save it on my desktop. You can see right here it says file type projectfile.rvt. That's what it should say. If it doesn't say that, then you've made a mistake somewhere, and you need to probably go back and rewind the video a little bit and follow along. All right, so I've named it. I've selected my desktop. I'm just going to hit save. It's going to take a minute to think, and then we'll be done. All right, cool. So by default, it opens us up to, if I look over here in my project browser, you can see I'm under the view category, under floor plans, and it's L1. So it's opened up the level 1 floor plan. And these can be named anything. If I right click here, I can rename it. If you don't like how it says L1 and you want to write out level 1, you can do that. Or in residential architecture, it's more common, instead of writing level 1, we call it main floor, second floor, third floor, or basement if it's below that, right? So you can rename the views however you want, but by default, it's just going to open you up to this floor plan on level 1. Okay, let's open up a couple other views and then tile them like we did in the last video. Okay, so we want the floor plan. Let's look at an elevation. So let's see if they have an elevation here. Oh, look. So here's the category elevations. I'm going to click the button to expand it, and here's north, south, east, and west. Again, these are views that have already been created in the template. If you didn't have a template, none of this would be here. You would have to create all of this from scratch by yourself. And we're going to go over how to do that in the next video, because I think it's important that you know how to create views and not rely too heavily on a template, because in real life, you're going to need to create a lot of views. And I've had people that I've worked with that didn't know how to create a view because when they learned Revit, they just always used a template and they didn't even learn the basics. So we'll go over that in the next, later in the course. But for now, just know that these only exist because someone else made them and someone else put them in the template. So let's do the south elevation. And again, it'll bring us to the south elevation. Nothing's really there because nothing's been modeled, but we have the view open. So now we have a tab with the floor plan, the elevation, and let's do a 3D view. Okay, so there's not a real good 3D view. So in order to create a default 3D view, what you can do is if you go up here to the top of the bar, there's a little house. And if you click on the house, it will automatically pull you into a 3D view. And it now creates a new 3D view right here. So do you see this? How it says 3D? And now we're in the 3D view. So now we've got a floor plan, an elevation, and a 3D view. Let's tile those. So if you remember how to do that, you go to View. And down here where it says Tile Views, you can click on that. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you the shortcut. So on my computer, it's TW is the keyboard shortcut. I don't know if that's the same for you. I have my own shortcuts that I've created. I have thousands of them. So I don't know if they'll match yours, but for sure, if you hover over it, it will tell you on your computer what the shortcut is. Okay, so now I've tiled the views and I'm just gonna recenter everything so that I can see it nicely. And here we go. So that set us up so that we can start working. Another thing I forgot to tell you already is if you go back to the View tab, and if you look in that same area with all the other view, with the Tile View command, there's the Tab Views command. So if you want to put them back in tab format, you can do that. And it'll put them back all tabbed like they were before. So you can tile them or you can tab them. And then the other thing is if you have a bunch of views that you've opened, and like they're running across the whole thing and you don't want to close them one by one, there is a close inactive tabs. So you pick the one you want to keep. So let's keep our 3D view. And if you hit the close inactive tabs, you see how it closed all the other tabs. So if you had 20 tabs open, you could close them all by hitting the close inactive tab. That will help speed up your computer. All right, and then let's open our floor plan back up and our south elevation. If you had a ton of tabs but you didn't want to close them, you can also go over here to switch windows, and if you click on it, it'll give you a drop down of all of the views you have open, and you can pick which one you want to jump to. Right now I only have 3 open, so it's not that big of a deal, but sometimes I have like 20 views open and I want to keep them open. And so I'll jump around using this command. All right, so let's tile the views again. Let's put them back where we need them to start modeling. And I want the floor plan. Yeah, here we go. I want the floor plan right here. Let's do the 3D view here and the front elevation here. Okay, so now we're all situated and we're ready to do our first command. So let's go up to the ribbon. Let's go to the architectural command. What we're going to do is for this exercise, we're going to create our first little building. We'll do a little residential house, just that typical shape that you would draw if you were a 4-year-old drawing a house. Let's just start with that, right? So the first thing we might need, let's just look at the commands that are available to us. Walls, doors, windows, other components, roofs, ceilings. So let's just start with wall. So if you click the wall command, you'll see your cursor changes from an arrow to crosshairs. So let's go over to our floor plan. And we're just going to click and drag. And then just keep clicking around until we've made a square. So a couple of things to keep in mind as you first start doing this is you'll see when you move your cursor around, there's like these little pink symbols that pop up. These are called snaps. They assist you in drawing. So the square is called an endpoint snap. So it's telling you if you want to start your next, you can see I still have the crosshairs, which means I'm still in the wall command. So it still wants to draw a wall. So my next click, it's going to start drawing a wall. So if I hover over this, it gives me the endpoint for that wall. And if I click, that means I'm starting that wall where the previous wall ended. So now I can click there. And do you see how it automatically tries to chain the walls together? And it'll keep trying to chain the walls together until I get to another wall. So if I click on this endpoint, it now stops trying to chain them together. But do you see how I still have the crosshair, which means I'm still in the wall command? So if you don't want it to do that, if you just want to draw one wall and click, and now you don't want another wall, you can hit the escape key once, and it will stop the wall. But you can still see I'm in the wall command because my cursor still looks like an X. So now if I click again, it's going to build another wall. And then if I hit escape, it'll stop the wall. And if I hit escape twice, it'll take me out of the command, and now I'm back just with a cursor. So let's do the wall again. And you'll notice while you're in the wall command, you can still zoom in and out, and you can still pan, even while you're in the wall command. That's great because if I was here and then I needed to draw a wall over here, I don't have to get out of the command. I can stay in the command, navigate, and then start a new wall. Okay, so I'm going to hit escape twice to get out of the wall command. Now, something else you might want to try is let's get into the wall command again. And you'll notice once you've started the command, the ribbon changes tabs, and now it goes to the modify tab for placing walls. And what you'll want to pay attention to most is over here, this little draw section. By default, you're going to draw a line. So you're just drawing a wall in a straight line. But if you want to do something else, you can do other commands. There's a rectangle, so let's click the rectangle. So what that does is it lets you pick two opposite corners to form a rectangular wall. So I clicked the first corner, and if I drag it down to here, I click the second corner, and now it's drawn 4 walls for me in the shape of a rectangle. So clicking twice saved me 4 clicks, right? So instead of having to do each wall, I did all 4 at once. Let's do the wall command again, and let's do a circle. So now you click once for the center, and then you click the radius, and now you've drawn a circle. Okay, so now notice over here in 3D, you can see what we've been drawing in 3D. You can see this whole mess is showing up in 3D. Because again, when you draw stuff in Revit, you're not just drawing in a floor plan in 2 dimensions. You also notice all of our walls have a height. And then if you look over in our elevation, you can see all the walls are forming. So this is to highlight one big advantage about modeling in 3D. If you were doing this in AutoCAD, all you would be doing in floor plan is creating lines. So if you wanted to draw a floor plan, you draw the whole floor plan, and then you would have to go to the elevation, and there would be nothing there for you to start with. You'd have to draw from scratch the whole front elevation of the house, right? So in Revit, just by modeling the walls, you're automatically creating the geometry for your other views. And so when you go to do the elevations, it'll be much easier because the whole building's already drawn for you. You just have to make sure the view looks good. Okay, so we'll get into all of that, but this saves a ton of time compared to AutoCAD. All right, you can, let's go back to the wall command. The reason we're taking so much time on the walls is because a lot of these things that we're learning in the wall command translate to other commands. You'll find some similarities. So we won't take this long for each command, but it's good for you to practice. And you can play with the different drawing styles. Like you can also do an ellipse, which is like a circle that's not the same dimension on all sides. You can do an arc, where you pick the two ends and then you pick the radius. You can do a polygon. And you'll notice when you're in a command, there's the modify tab that comes open, but there's also this little sneaky bar that's in between your views and the ribbon that has more commands. So since we're on the polygon tool, there is this thing right here that says how many sides we want to draw. If we only want 3 sides because we want a triangle, we can modify that up there and then click and it will do 3 sides. So sometimes pay attention to what's going on this little line right here, because it can modify the command that you're in. All right, so I'm going to hit Control Z to undo all of this and get us back to a clean looking view. Okay, so we're back to where we started. Let's take a minute longer before we start drawing walls. Something to keep in mind is, like I just showed you, we're drawing walls, but there's also a third dimension, so the height. So the question that should be in your mind is, okay, I know how to draw in 2D now, the length and width of the wall, but how do I control how tall it's going? And so to understand that, we want to talk about something called datum points. Datum points are just common elements of data that control a lot of things in the model all at once. So one of those datum points is what we call levels. So if you look at your south elevation, by default in this template, there are 2 levels that are already created for you. Again, we'll learn how to create levels later, but for now, just know that the default template already comes with 2 built in. There's level 1 and level 2. And you see how they have a height? Level 1 is ground 0. It's basically at the ground. It's 0, 0. And then level 2 is 12 feet above level 1. So because this is a residential house, level 2 is never 12. Well, I shouldn't say never, but in a typical house, the first floor is maybe 9 feet. So let's select the level, select the line. And once the line is selected, it'll allow you to come click on the height of the level. See how I clicked on the height and then it brings up this little dialog box. Let's make that 9 feet. Okay, so here's something new you need to learn. This is typical everywhere. Where you're entering a dimension in Revit, it's going to assume whatever number you put in there, it's going to assume you mean feet. So if I just put 9 in there and hit enter, it'll assume 9 feet. So if I was trying to put inches in, I would be in trouble. Let's just for fun, let's make it 9'6". So we'll click on the line and then we'll click on the dimension. And so you could either highlight that and put 6 in and then hit enter, and now it puts it at 9'6". Or if you wanted to start from scratch, you could put 9 and then use the apostrophe symbol to be 9 feet. And then if you hit the space bar and put 6, and then you do the quotation symbol and then hit enter, it'll do 6 feet. Or 6 inches, sorry, 9'6". Okay, so there's lots of ways to enter dimensions, but just remember, if you just put a number in, and don't put, if you don't get it, any other information but the number, it will assume you mean feet. So let's say I want to do 10'6". So again, you can do 10 apostrophe space 6 and then quotation marks and then hit enter. Now if I want to do 11 feet 6, let's try that again. There's a third way of doing it. If I want to do 11'6", I can do 11, and then if I just hit the space bar, it knows that the first part is feet, and now it knows that you want to put inches. So if I do 11 spacebar 6 and hit enter, it will automatically put the symbols in for me. You just need to know how to input it correctly to get the results you want. So let's go back down to 9. So I'm just going to hit 9, enter, and it knows 9 feet. Okay, so that goes for everything. You'll find that that's the way you enter dimensions all over Revit. So keep that in mind. That's an important element. Okay, so now we have level 1 and level 2. They're the correct distance from each other. And since this is residential, let's rename it. So if I click on the level, instead of clicking on the dimension, let's click on the name, and I'll just type in main floor. And because I'm an architect, I like everything in capital letters, so I have my caps lock on. And then let's do level 2. We're not going to have a second floor on this house, so let's just call this roof. So now I've got my main floor and my roof line. Awesome. Now what we'll do, well, now what you need to understand is this view level 1 that we have open right here. When you draw, it's automatically assuming a level somewhere. So for example, when I draw my wall like this, you can see it automatically places the bottom of my wall on the main floor because that was level 1. So let's make this less confusing. Let's go over to our project browser and let's right click on level 1 and rename it. Let's name it main floor. That way it matches. So our main floor matches the level that this view is associated with. So when the view was created, it was created based on this level line. You can also tell what level of view was created from by looking at the view's properties. So if I click over here on my main floor, and if I look over in the properties panel, we haven't talked a lot about the properties panel, but it displays information on whatever you have selected. So if I've only selected the view, it's showing me floor plan. You can tell what you've selected by seeing that it's the floor plan. And if I go down here and I see, let's see, where do we? Okay, if you go to the extents section, there's a little thing in gray that says associated level. Do you see how it says main floor? So it's telling you whenever you draw in this view, it's going to automatically draw on the level that's called main floor. So watch, if I change this name to test level, it will ask, do you want to rename the corresponding view? So do you want to rename the main floor plan so that it matches the level? In this case, I don't, so I'm going to hit no. So now if I go back to my main floor and I look over here with associated level, you can see it's changed to test. So it lets me know that when I draw, I'm going to be drawing on this test level. Or now if I change it back to main floor, if I go back in here, you can see it now says main floor. So there's a lot to know as we get going, but if I don't teach you this, you're going to be real confused at what Revit is doing later. Because if you just drew your walls and didn't know what it was doing, it'll work for our exercise, but then when you go to do something on your own, you're going to wonder why it's misbehaving or it's not drawing things where you expect them to draw. All right, so that covers the bottom of the wall. The bottom of the wall by default, it will go to whatever level is associated with the view that you're in. So that's pretty straightforward. That doesn't require too much thinking. If you just open the view you want to draw on and start drawing, that's very intuitive. So now how do we control the top of the wall? So if I go to my floor plan and I select the wall, let's look at the properties panel. With the wall selected, it's now showing me the properties of the wall. So the property, you should really start to explore these on your own, but the properties that we're most concerned about right now are what's called the base constraint and the top constraint. So the base constraint is automatically set to the level that's associated with the view. So again, you can see it's the main floor. So the base, or the bottom of the wall, is starting on the main floor level. And if you want, there's also what's called a base offset. So if you wanted the wall to be 1 foot higher than the main floor, you can see, you can type in 1 foot, and do you see how it moved it up 1 foot over here in this elevation? Now, if I want to put it back down, I can go over here to the property of the wall and hit 0. So there's a 0 offset, and it moves it back down to the main level. So that can be helpful at different times. For now, we're going to leave it 0. So the top constraint right now, you can see is unconnected. So it's not associated with any level. And then you can see its unconnected height is 20 feet. So if I wanted it to be a 10-foot wall, I could put 10 feet in here and it would change the height of the wall. Do you see how it changed it? Or I could put it to 9 feet like that. And so now the wall is 9 feet. Okay, so that kind of looks right. And you could do it that way, but I never recommend having an unconnected wall at the top if you can avoid it. Sometimes you need that. That's what you need to do. But in our case, for this exercise, that's not what we need. Let me show you what the difference is. So if I go over here, it looks like it's the right height because it's at 9 feet. But if I decided later, oh, you know what? The owner really wants 10-foot ceilings. So I change the level to 10 feet for the roof. Do you see how the wall stays where it is? So the other option you want to do is for the top constraint. So let's click the wall. Let's look at the top constraint. Instead of unconnected, let's click there and it gives us a drop-down menu. And this menu will have any level that you've created in the project. Right now we only have 2, so it's only displaying 2 levels. But some projects get really complicated. There could be a basement level. There could be a foundation level. So what we want is we want the top of the wall to be connected to the roof level. So we'll click that, and do you see how the wall jumped from 9 feet up to the roof level? And so now the wall will always be whatever height the roof level is. So now if I change that to 9 feet, the wall follows with it. So let's do a real quick example. Let's delete that wall. I'm going to do all the walls for my house. So I'm going to click on the rectangle, and then I'm just going to click and drag, and then click again to make the rectangle. Now I'm going to hit escape twice to get out of the command. So now you can see, once again, I drew the walls without having constrained them. So let's click the wall. Let's select all of the walls. And here's, let's talk about mass selecting again. So I taught you before that you can click a wall, or that you can click something, and if you hold Control, you can add things to your selection. So that's one way of getting all of the walls. Let me teach you a couple more that are handy. Different types of selecting come in handy at different times. So that's the basic way of doing it. The other way is if you click and then drag your mouse, it makes this box. And anything within the box will get selected. So do you see how all 4 walls are selected? Or if I only completely enclose one wall, it just selects the one wall. So I can get all 4, or I can just get 1. Okay, so if you drag from left to right, the box has to, it will only select whatever is completely inside the box. So do you see how the top wall, because it's completely in the box, it gets selected, but the two end walls aren't selected because they're not completely in the box? Once I move the box to completely enclose them, it'll select them. Okay, so that's left to right. If you drag right to left, you get a different kind of selection box. Do you see how it's dotted? This box, anything it touches, it will select. So if I want these two, then I can just touch it, those two walls, or I can just touch the one wall, or I can touch that. But do you see how it's also selecting? These are called reference planes. You may not be able to see on my screen, but they're green. These are just to help you identify where the center of the project is. It's not important right now. We'll go over reference planes a little bit more later, but they're just there, like they say, as a reference. So if I do this selection box, it's grabbing everything in its path. It's not just getting the walls. It got the reference planes. It got this section arrow. Anything it touches, it's going to select. Whereas this, because I'm not completely enclosing the reference planes, it's not selecting those. Another thing about mass selecting that you'll want to know is, let's do it this way. So now we've selected a bunch of things and we only want the walls. When you select something like this, it'll tell you how many things down here have been selected. See how it says 7? And we only want the 4 walls selected. So if you come up here to the modify command, there's this little thing called filter. And if you click that, it'll tell you all the types of things you've selected and you can filter them out. So I didn't mean to get the reference planes and I didn't mean to get the views. All I wanted was my walls. So if I only select the walls, I can click OK. And now it gets rid of everything else and only my walls are selected. Sorry, that was a little bit of a detour about selecting, but it's a critical skill that you should have as well, selecting. All right, so let's grab all 4 walls. Let's get back to what we were talking about. Let's associate the top constraint with the roof level. So if I select them all at once, I can change all of those walls at once. So now I'm going to come over here to top constraint and I'm going to change it to roof level. And now if I look in my elevation, you can see the walls are now back down to the roof level. And again, if I change it to 10 feet high, it changes all 4 of my walls. So that is why I associate it with levels, because if you ever have to change things in the future, it makes it way, way easier. If you had 400 walls because you were working on a big project and someone needed you to change the height, it would be a big deal to try to change all of those walls if they weren't associated with a level. But if they are associated with a level, it's very easy. So let's put it back down at 9 feet. And now let's say we want to divide this. Let's put some rooms inside. So I go back to the wall command. Now, before I draw a wall, let's look at what's happening. Before you draw the wall, you can still see what properties the wall that you're about to draw will have. And you can see if you go to the top constraint that it's unconnected. Let's just change that right now to roof. That way I don't have to change the walls after I draw them. I can change it before I draw them. So now if I draw a room, draw a couple rooms, you can see they're not popping up higher. In 3D, you can see, oh, they're all at the same height. And if I click on these new walls, you can look and see that the top constraint has already been set for you. So it's important when you go to draw a wall, like when I click to draw a new wall, it also remembers what your last settings were. So now I don't have to keep thinking about it. If I set these up once before I draw, it will remember from now on the settings. So now it remembers that I want to draw from the main floor up to the roof, and now I can just draw new walls without having to think. See how everything now is aligned? And now I can change this to 10 feet. Oops. and all of the walls move up. I can also just drag this. You see how they just follow along? Okay, so let's put this back at 9 feet. Let's get rid of the walls we didn't want. All right, so now we have our little house. Let's call this the living room, the bedroom, and well, that'll be the bathroom. Great. So now the other thing you'll want to know before we get into the other commands is how to more precisely control the dimensions of your house or your model. Because when you were drawing, let's go back into a wall command, and let's say we want to draw a wall that's exactly 4 feet long. So we'll click, and do you see how there's blue dimensions? So with my mouse, I set the direction of the wall. And then you can see it's trying to guess the dimension. So I can just move until it says exactly 4 feet and then click. And now that wall is exactly 4 feet long. Now if I go into the wall command again, let's do one that's a little more complicated. Let's do 4 feet 1 inch. And you can see it's not snapping, it's snapping in increments of 6 inches. So if I want it 4'1", what do I do? Okay, the best thing to do is to set the direction, and then there's no way that you would know this, but you can simply type in your keyboard the dimension that you want. So if I just type in 4 spacebar 1 and hit enter, it will draw it exactly 4'1 inch. So now that wall is 4'1 inch. Okay, now let's delete those. Let's come back to our main building and let's start dimensioning it better. Let's click on this wall. Do you see how it pops up? These are called temporary dimensions, and they're in blue. So it's going to give you its best guess at what you're trying to dimension from. So you've clicked this wall, which means you're about to edit this wall. You want to do something to it of some sort. And let's say we want to move it. Maybe what we're trying to do is we want the house to be, let's say 60 feet deep. Let's say 40 feet deep and 60 feet wide. So the best thing to do is let's pick a wall we want to move. And this temporary dimension is going to help us move the wall. So the temporary dimension has this little dot. You can click on it and drag, and you can move it somewhere else. So we're going to put it to the outside face of the front wall. And then this end we're going to put on the back face of the wall. So now it's saying our house is 39 feet 2 inches deep. So let's change that by clicking on the temporary dimension, and let's type in 40 and hit enter. So now that back wall is exactly 40 feet. The back face of that wall is 40 feet from the front face of the wall. So let's do that with the width. Now with the width, we want it to be 60 feet overall, but let's center it on this reference line. So I'm going to move my temporary dimension to the reference line. And then I'm going to move this one to the back side of the wall. And let's do 30 feet because that's half of 60. And then let's do the same thing here. Let's move, oops, not 60, 30. So now, if I change the temporary dimension to go from side to side, you can see it's 60. So let's do the same thing with the bedroom. Let's say we want the inside of the bedroom to be exactly 20 feet wide. It looks like the temporary dimensions are already from inside face to inside face. So we don't need to move the dimension. Now we just need to tell it 20 feet. And now let's say this we want to be 10 feet deep inside. So we'll click 10. So now we have precisely moved the walls where we want them to be. Now some other modifier commands that you might want to know is let's click on a wall, and if you go up to the modify command, there's a bunch of tools that can help you with the walls. The most common one, let's see, is the move command. So you can hit the move command, and what it does is it lets you pick 2 points. It's going to pick your first point and then your destination point. So let's say we wanted to move this wall 10 feet backwards. We can click on the wall, and then we set the direction, and then I type in 10, and it moves at 10 feet. So if I want to move it back, I'm going to click the wall, and then I'm going to hit the move command, and let's click once for the reference point, and then let's set the direction with the cursor, and then hit 10 again, and it'll move it back. So the move command is pretty common. Also, copy is pretty common. So let's select a wall. And if you go over here, there's the copy command. If you click it, it allows you to pick 2 points again, a reference point and then the destination point. So we can click the wall, and if we want it to be 10 feet away, we can do like we've been doing before. We can just set the direction and type in 10, and it copies the wall 10 feet. So I'm going to delete that. Another command that's nice is rotate. So it works the same way. If you click the wall and then hit the rotate button, you can see it gives you this little tool, and you pick 2 points. Again, you pick a starting point as a reference, and then you move it the angle, the amount that you want it to rotate. So I'll just click here, and then we can type in the angle. So if we want 45 degrees, we can hit 45 and it'll rotate it. Let's try that again with one more modification. So if I click the wall, hit the rotate command, do you see this little dot in the middle? That's the axis about which it will rotate the wall. So by default, it tries to put it in the center of the wall. But if you want to rotate it around this edge right here, you can grab the dot and you can move it wherever you want it. So let's move it here. And now when I rotate it 45 degrees, you can see how it rotates it around that edge that I picked rather than the center. Okay, another important command that's fun or good to know is the trim command. So this happens before you select the wall. So don't select anything, go up to the Modify tab, and there's this little icon here that's called the Trim or Extend command. So if you click that button, it allows you to click 2 walls that you want to make a corner with. So let me just show you. So if I click this wall and I click this wall, do you see how it makes a corner? So this is great for like, let's add some more walls out here. So say I draw that wall, and that wall, and I would like the house to extend over there. Maybe I'm adding a garage. So if I use the trim command, I click the 2 walls that I want to join into a corner, right? So I'll click this wall, and then I'll click this wall, and it joins them together. So let's do that one more time. This wall, and then you see how if I hover over the wall, it shows dotted lines of what it's going to do. When I click, it joins them. So another thing you might want to do is, instead of joining, maybe you want to extend a wall. So right now, if I use the join command to try to stretch this wall to this wall, do you see how it deletes this side of the wall because it's trying to make a corner? So I'm going to undo that. The other thing to notice about the join command is, depending on what part of the wall you click on, it changes the way it behaves. So see how if I click on the top side of this wall, it deletes the bottom side and keeps the top? You need to make sure you're careful about where you click on the wall. It'll keep where you click. So if I click on the bottom side of the wall, it keeps the bottom side. But if I click the top, it keeps the top side. But what if I just want the wall to stretch? You can do that a couple ways. You can click on the wall. Oops. You can click on the wall, and there's this little dot at the end, and you can stretch it if you want. But let's say we had a bunch of these walls and we want to stretch them all to this wall. You can use a command called extend. So if you go to the Modify tab, there's two extend commands. There's extend single or there's extend multiple. So extend single will just allow you to do one. So you click first where you want the wall to go to. So I'm going to click this wall, and then you click the wall that you want to extend. And again, it gives you that little dotted line to preview what you're about to do. Great. So if you wanted to do it for all three walls, you have to keep clicking where you want it to extend and then the wall that you're going to extend. So let's undo that. The multiple extend command will do all of them at once. So if I click this command, I can first click where I want the wall to go to, and then I can click each wall and extend it. Or if you use that command, you can also click where you want it to extend to, and then you can use the drag tool to mass select all three, and it'll extend all three. All right, so let's go back to our original house. Let's delete that. Let's use the trim command to get those corners back to the way they were. And here we are back to our house. There's other modify elements that we will learn over time, like the mirror command. So for example, if I wanted this whole house flipped, I can go up here to the mirror command, and there's a little option here that says copy. I'm going to uncheck that because I don't want it to copy it. So I already selected what I want to mirror, and now I need to tell it what axis to mirror it over. So if I click this, it'll flip the whole house. And then if I do the command again, and if I pick this axis, it'll flip it that way. So let's just keep doing the mirror command. Let's get it back to the way it was. There we go. So now we're back to the way we were. So that's the mirror command. So there's a lot of modify commands. I will try to teach you new ones as we go throughout the semester, but you can also feel free to experiment with those commands. One more I probably should teach you that's pretty important is called the aligned command. So let's draw another wall. Let's say this is a shed that we're trying to build, but we want the edge of the shed to align with the main house. You can go up to the modify command, and there's a tool called align. If you click on this, you first select where you want to align to, and then you click what you want to be aligned. So let's just look through this. I want this wall to be aligned with the edge of the house. So first I'll click the edge of the house. That's where I want to move it to. And you get this dotted line to tell you this is where you're going to move everything to. Now you click the edge that you want to be aligned. So you click that part of the wall, and now it moves it to be aligned. We can do the same thing here. And now it's aligned. Now if we want the shed to be 10 feet away from the house, we can click on this wall, because this is the wall we intend on moving, and click 10 or type in 10 and it'll move it. Now let's make the shed, let's say on the outside. The outside of the shed should be 12 feet deep. And there we go, there's our little shed. Okay, then we're just going to delete that because that no longer matters. All right, so far we haven't done a lot. We've drawn walls. Let's start looking at how we're going to draw the floor and the roof, and then add windows and doors and a ceiling. Okay, let's go back to our architectural command or tab, and let's look for floor right here. So if you click the floor command, it immediately starts you in the floor mode. And what it does is it'll allow you to select the walls. And you see how it draws a purple line for where it wants to put the floor? This is called sketch mode. So things like floors and roofs are different from walls. When you enter the floor command, it automatically takes you into sketch mode. And so what you're trying to do here is sketch the floor. So by default, it's going to let you pick the walls. And if you look over here on the menu, you can see that it's by default, it's highlighted the pick walls tool. But it can be like when you were drawing walls, you can move it up to the line command and you can draw different lines. So let's delete those. So maybe I also want a porch across the front. I can draw a porch. And this in sketch mode is where a lot of those commands I just taught you will come in handy. So if I select this, I'm going to hit delete to delete the line. And then we're going to use the trim command to trim that down to that. And then we're going to select this. And let's say we want the porch to be 8 feet. We're going to make it 8 feet. So now there's the floor inside the building and then an 8-foot porch. And when we got the floor, when we have it the way we want it, we're going to finish the sketch. So we have to come up here and we have to hit finish, the little check mark, and now it builds the floor. And do you see how it's added the floor in? But maybe we don't like how it did it. So let's go back. We can highlight the floor and you can come up here where it says edit boundary. You can click that and it'll take you back into the sketch. So now let's move the floor sketch so that it's underneath the exterior side of the wall. So you can click and you can just drag the line if you want, or you can use the align command. Why isn't the align command? Oh, maybe the align command doesn't work. Let's try it again. Align. There we go. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but there we go. Now we can click finish and it updates the floor to be where we want the floor to be. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Let's go back into the sketch and you'll notice all of the same modify commands are there. You can align, you can move, you can copy, you can mirror, rotate, trim, extend. And then the other thing you might want is offset. Let's take a second to learn about the offset command. All it does is it makes a copy of whatever you select and offsets it by a certain distance. So let's go to the offset command. And then down here on this bar, it tells you, you can tell it how far to offset something. So if we want it to offset 2 feet, we'll put in 2 here and hit enter. And now if I go to this command, or if I go to the sketch, you can see if I highlight something, there's that little blue line that's offset 2 feet. So now if I wanted to, for some reason, create a floor that was donut shaped or that didn't have a center part, that's how I would do it. And then we could use the trim command to get these corners right. And then we could finish sketch and you can see how it's made like a funny floor. So let's go back into that sketch, edit it, and undo what we just did. So here's another fun trick. If you select a line and you hit tab, it will select the other lines that are connected to it. So I'm going to hover over one line, I'm going to hit tab, and then I'm going to press my mouse button, and now it's selected all 4 lines. Now I can delete them all at once, rather than clicking each one individually and deleting it 4 times. So now let's finish the sketch, and now we have a floor. All right, now let's do the ceiling before we do the roof. So now we need ceilings in these rooms. Before I go further, if you click the floor and look at its properties, again, notice that it assumes that you're wanting to draw the floor at the level of the view that you're drawing in. So it automatically associated the floor with the main floor plan, with the main level. So now as we do the ceilings, it's going to do the same thing. If I'm in level 1, it's going to assume you want to draw the ceiling on level 1, but that's not what we want. or maybe it is, but then we'll need to push it off the, if we draw ceilings right now, it's going to draw them on the floor. Let's maybe just do that so that you can see. So if we go over to the architectural tab, there's a ceiling command, and a ceiling, it gives us two options. Do you want to automatically try to create the ceiling, or do you want to sketch the ceiling? 90% of the time I sketch the ceiling. So I hit the sketch button, and now it gives me the same tools that you already saw in the last, in the floor command. We're just going to draw a sketch here. So let's draw a separate ceiling for each room. So let's first do what I'm going to call the bedroom. So we'll draw that rectangle, and now we'll click finish. Oh, and it automatically, you can see it put the roof in, or the ceiling, and it automatically assumed you wanted it 9 feet off of the main floor. So like if we select this in floor plan, or sorry, in the 3D view, you can see its properties. It's associated with the main floor, and it's 9 feet above the main floor. So that's kind of what we wanted. So it just got lucky and guessed. But let's say the bedroom, we want it to have an 8-foot ceiling. We can change it to 8 feet, and you see how it drops it? So the walls are at one height, and the ceiling's at another. So let's continue to do that same thing for the other views. Let's do another ceiling sketch. I'm going to pick the rectangle tool. I'm going to draw a rectangle, and then I'm going to hit finish. And then I'll do that one more time. For the last room. Okay, so now we got all of our roofs, and they're all associated with the main floor, and they're offset by a certain ceiling height. Okay, let's do the bathroom. Let's just make it a 7-foot ceiling, and let's make the living room, let's make it 8'6" high. Okay, so now all our rooms have different ceiling heights. Now we're ready for the roof. So we've got a floor, we've got walls, we've got ceilings. Now this thing just needs a roof. So let's go back up here to the architectural tab and click roof. And now it's asking you, what level do you want the roof to be associated with? And we already created a level for the roof, so we'll just select roof and click yes. And we'll come over here and we'll sketch our roof. So I picked the triangle command, or sorry, the rectangle command, and I'm just going to pick the outside walls of the roof, or the outside walls to create the edge of the roof. And there we go. Now I'm going to hit escape to get out of the drawing tool. Now you'll notice on roof sketches, there's this little triangle, and that's to let you know that it's going to slope that edge of the roof automatically. So if I click on that line, do you see how it shows numbers? So this is the roof pitch, how angled the roof is. So 9 is a pretty steep pitch. We'll leave it at 9 for now, but just know that you can change the pitch of each wall, or you can even highlight it. You can highlight that edge, and if you come up here where it says define slope, you can uncheck that box, and then that edge won't be sloped. So let's leave it like that, and I'll show you what it looks like when we finish the sketch. So we'll click finish, and now it automatically makes the roof. Do you see all 3 sides that we told it to angle are angled, and then the side we told it not to angle is not angled? So this is what's called a hip, and this is a gable end. So maybe we want the gable end to be at the front of the house. So maybe we want it to be a triangle at the front of the house and at the back of the house, but on the sides we want it to angle. So let's modify that. Let's go to the roof and let's hit the edit footprint. Now let's go back to our floor plan and let's select the wall that isn't sloped, or the line, the edge of the roof that isn't sloped, and let's define the slope. Click that checkbox again, and it'll make it sloped. Now let's select the front and the back, and let's undefine the slope there. So now it won't slope here or here. Now let's click OK. Now it makes a big gable at the front of the house, which looks a little bit funny. So maybe let's just angle all the edges of the roof. Let's go back, edit the footprint. Let's put the angle back. Let's select both of these walls, hit define slope, and then finish. And now there we go. That looks more like a little bit of a normal looking house. The only problem is normally the roof overhangs the edge of the house. So let's figure out how to do that. Let's go back, edit the footprint. This is where the offset command could come in handy. Let's go to the offset, and right here, let's enter 1 foot. Now, if we go over here, click once to activate the view. Once you've activated the view, you can select each line individually and offset it, or if you hover over it, you can hit the tab button and you can see it will do all 4 at once. So now it offsets those lines all at once. Now we just need to delete the original one. So if I hover back over the line, hit tab, click the button, it'll select all 4 at once, and then I can hit delete. So now there's a 1 foot overhang around the entire exterior of the house. But now maybe we want to have a covered porch. So let's extend this out to the edge of the porch. Oh, but we want it to have an overhang too. So let's use the move command. Select the line, pull it a certain direction with the mouse button, and then let's hit 1, enter, and then there's a 1 foot offset. Okay, now we got the roof where we want it. Let's hit finish, and now you can see it's done exactly what we wanted. Now the only thing we don't have is now we don't have soffit underneath the porch or above the porch. So now we need to put in soffit. So this gets a little more complicated. Up till now, we've only been using a floor plan, front elevation, and 3D. Now we maybe need something that instead of looking down at the floor plan, maybe we need to look up at the bottom of the roof. So to do that, we have what are called ceiling plans. And there's a level 1 ceiling plan. Let's rename it to be main floor. And now let's open that up. So do you see how in the main window, we've now got floor plan. There's the main floor plan let's name it. That's a little confusing. Let's rename it main floor ceiling. That way. Oh, and then it's asking, do you want us to rename the level? No. Okay, so now you can see we're in the main floor ceiling plan, and you can switch back to the main floor plan. So all this is doing, it's the same thing as the floor plan, but instead of looking down, it's looking up. So now you can see this is our ceiling, is what you can see here. And what we want to do is we want to create a ceiling above the porch. So let's quickly, well, we don't want to create a ceiling, sorry, we want to create a soffit. So if we go to the roof command, there's a little drop down button and you can create a soffit. So we'll click soffit. It's going to ask you again what level you want it to be associated with. We'll pick the roof and we'll click yes. So now we're just going to draw a sketch like we did before. So we want the soffit to start at the outside edge of the house, and then let's offset it 1 foot like we did before. And again, if you hover over the line, you can see where depending on where you move your mouse, it changes which side you're going to offset on. So I'm going to click in the view to make it active. I'm going to tab select all the outside walls and then finalize my selection. Then I know the porch is 8 feet from the exterior wall. So we're just going to move the wall, click the move command. We're going to move the sketch 8 feet. So now it should be aligned exactly to the bottom of the roof. And we'll click the finish sketch button. So now if I look in 3D, you can see it added soffit to the bottom of the roof. So now we've got a complete house. Floors, walls, ceilings, roof, and soffit. So I know this is a lot. This has been a long lecture, but this is the fundamentals for everything you're going to need to do in your assignment. But it'll go a lot faster in your assignment because now you know how to do all of this stuff. So the last thing we want to do is at least we want to add doors and windows. So let's do that now. If I click over here on doors, it'll open up the door command. And if I come over to the floor plan and hover over a wall, oh, sorry, let me escape out of this command. I'm still in the ceiling plan. I want to go back to a floor plan. Now let's do the door command. If I hover over a wall, you can see it's going to place a door. Before I click anything, let's look at the door properties. You can see this is a 36 wide door by 84 inches tall. And if you click in here, you can change what kind of door you're putting in. So this is just a normal door, but you can see there's also double doors. There's doors with glass in them. We're going to pick just a 36 by 84 inch door. So if you pick that, then you can look over here at the sill height, which we want it to be we want it to be right on the ground. And again, because we're in the main floor plan, it's automatically going to assume the bottom of the door is going to be on the main floor. So let's put this as our front door. Now, when you move over the wall, it gives you a preview of where it's going to put it. And if you hover more towards the inside of the wall, it'll swing it in, or if you move your cursor down towards the outside, it'll swing it out. And then another thing you can do is if you keep your cursor where it is, if you hit the space bar, it will flip the direction of the swing. So if we want to move this right here and flip the swing, there you go. Now let's do most interior doors in a residential application are 30 inches wide. The exterior doors are usually 36 and then interior doors are usually 30. So, okay, so now I changed it to a 30-inch door and now it's trying to remind me to save. So let's go ahead and save the project. All right, so once it's saved, I'm back in the 30-inch door command. So let's put a door here and let's just put a door here. Okay, and that's it. That's how you place doors. Then if you go to the window command, we can place windows. So again, here, let's look at the type of window before we place it. So this is a 36-inch wide window by 48 inches. That's probably fine. So let's select that and keep it. And then this tells us how far off the ground we're going to place it. 3 feet sounds good to me, so we can leave it at that. But if you wanted to change it to 2, you could change it to 2, or you could change it back to 3. And that's fine. So let's go here. And again, depending on where you click, where you put your cursor before you click, flips the direction of the window. So usually the glass is to the exterior side and not the interior side. So I'm going to place it here and here. So let's just put our windows in. And there you go. Now you can see we've got windows and they're showing up in all of our views. And then just like anything else, you can click on them to edit it. So if I wanted this to be a 3-foot door, I can click on the door and I can go over here and I can change from a 30-inch door to a 36-inch door. You can click on it and drag it. You can also click on it and there's these little arrows to flip it different ways. And then if you click it, there's also the temporary dimensions so that you can place it exactly where you want it. You can also use the align command on these. So if we go to the modify and use align, you can click this reference plane And if you hover over the door, it'll try to find you the center point of the door. And then you can align it to the center of that line. Or if you want to align it to the edge of the wall, you can do that as well. Or if you want to use the move command and move it exactly 6 inches, you can move it 6 inches. And then the windows are the same way. You can edit their distance. You can edit the sill height. So if we want this one 2 feet off the ground, you can see it moved it. If you want it to be a different size window, we could pick a bigger window and it'll move it. So there you go. That is your first exercise. You've learned a lot. This is probably going to be one of the longer lectures. Hopefully most of the other lectures won't be this long, but there was a lot to cover to just get you up to speed. Take some time, experiment with the exercise file that you've just created. And then once you feel good about this, move on to your assignment. Your assignment should be easy once you've already done this.